Podcast, MSD and CQC Posing Forces, Tradecraft Principles and Practices. Like with many MSD and CQC tactics and skills that must be taught from an instructor hands-on because of the multiple employment uses and the requirements for correct and proper setup, initiation, employment and contingency options and objective achievement, posing forces is a very important part of most MSD and CQC skills-related objective achievement. The how-to training and instruction you will need to get from your CQC MSD instructor. However, this file will brief the importance and the diversity of posing forces and objective achievement and actions on. At a Phase 1 basic level, as part of learning seizing and securing of the enemy, posing forces becomes very important with the capability to effectively seize, secure, control and contain, and then as part of setup of takedowns or offensive actions employments. By employment of high-low seizing and securing and a diagonal stance and body positioning, visual awareness is heightened by identifying boots movement indicating enemy actions. By identifying such actions and employing posing forces, loading resistance, many threats specific and close quarters actions on can be prevented or countered. Opposing forces applies to loading joints and extremities, hyperextension of extremities, and dynamic destruction by employing offensive or counter-offensive opposing forces as part of skills executions. Opposing forces loading and detainee handling in the execution of control and restraint skills is very important for not only the initiation and execution of skills, but also to move or manipulate or decentralize the detainee. Opposing forces controlled leverage includes rotational and dynamic destruction combined components. It is not only most important in enemy counter actions, but also in battlefield takedowns, as it provides the ability to take advantage of enemy reactions and responses in the setup of battlefield takedowns. Like with everything in MSD and CQC, contingency options are a very important part of a complete strategy in the execution of unarmed offensive assault and counter-offensive assault actions, as well as armed combat actions. In close quarters clinching and the prevention of takedowns, throws, and unarmed offensive actions, posing forces plays a major part in the prevention, counter, and the setup of counter-engagement actions against such enemy actions on. Opposing forces employments are often dictated by your sense of feel that the enemy is making a movement when you are locking them up at close quarters and do not have a visual on their upper quadrants. Resistance and yielding are components of opposing forces in regards to preventing and the execution of counteractions to threat neutralize. By close quarters clinching with the enemy, the setup of knee joint and kneecap ligaments destruction by stamp kicking means is a primary means of incapacitation and enemy threat neutralization. Clinching, seizing and securing, dynamic loading and opposing forces pulling and the employment of diagonally downward stamp kicks below the knee joint to the ground are a truly destructive means of enemy incapacitation. Seizing and securing and opposing forces employments also apply to close-range unarmed offensive assault striking skills, making the outcomes of objective achievement that much more certain. The seizing and securing of the enemy in point-blank body contact range with one hand and employing the free arm with palm heel strikes and other strikes, applying a pulling action with the striking action maximizes the effects of opposing forces, dynamic skills executions. Opposing forces seizing and securing of the enemy not only applies to the seizing and securing of the head and arms, but also seizing and securing the webbing, belts and body armor. Anything that is robust and can be used to pull the enemy into or onto an unarmed offensive or armed defensive action for the battlefield will maximize objective achievement and incapacitation or enemy elimination. Elite forces, lethal, unarmed skills employments utilize opposing forces, dynamic actions to destroy the spinal cord and other life support systems by overkill, kill or die actions for the battlefield. Some other undertaken actions where opposing forces, principles and practices are employed include in the retention and securing of your weapon and in the prevention of the enemy disarming you of the weapon. They also apply to disarming the enemy of their weapon and in evasive bayonet disarming. In Amphib, CQC and MSD, opposing forces are very important to ensure the seizing, securing and hold retention of the enemy and maximising destructive forces output. Like with all MSD and CQC strategies, the tactics and skills have built-in safety, and for opposing forces, by the nature of the seizing and securing, grasping and grips, maximum safety is provided and immediate release can be employed. Under Todd systems training, and especially with the employment of opposing forces, seizure and securing, combatants are instructed in the importance of making the enemy wear their weight and loading them by means of utilizing large muscle groups over arm-to-arm force, which can result in ligament and tendon damage. Opposing forces, seizing and securing, and the specific grip used apply to the holding of your riot stick to ensure it has commonality with the holding and retention of your primary weapon and all other long weapons. It provides straight line, diagonal cutting, upward, downward, and roundhouse capabilities, all the time maintaining a maximum retention of your weapon. The importance of commonality and skills execution cohesion cannot be said enough times and must be reiterated to ensure that everything is same or similar, as in a high risk actions on. The higher the threat and risk level, the lesser the response time, and the more importance of same system, same practices and principle, tradecraft skills that are primary actions and maximize objective achievement quickly, quietly, and as safely as combatant possible. Opposing forces, seizure and securing, is an offensive action in its own right, whether it is employed with high-level force output destruction or covertly employed with pressure destruction, including rotational force. Close to, if not every action taken in MSD and CQC includes a component of opposing forces. Sentry neutralization, use of a garrote, is one such skill where opposing forces is the major means of achieving enemy elimination. The destruction of the genitals by means of opposing forces grips, rotational and dynamic separation is another, along with the holding and employment of improvised weapons and improvised mechanical restraints, and for canine neutralization using a tether and opposing forces to neutralize canine threat. In ground combat, enemy neutralization and offensive escapes rely on the practices, principles and procedures of compound grips and opposing forces to force the release or make the escape possible by foul or deadly means. To force the release of objects or weapons, opposing forces, practice and principles, along with pain compliance and human anatomy destruction, ensure the recovery of items or weapons and the retention by opposing forces, seizure and securing of such objects or weapons. Opposing forces, tradecraft training, practices and principles provide a high-level understanding of practical anatomy considerations in regards to enemy movement, manipulation, stopping of movements, as well as prevention, retention and retention skills and enemy incapacitation or battlefield enemy elimination. Compound opposing forces, offensive actions can stun and incapacitate or eliminate an enemy, such as the sudden aggressive shock action, surprise elements, and the targeting of multiple targets simultaneously. By means of effective opposing forces, grabbing and seizing and securing of an enemy, they can be manipulated, moved and used as cover against other enemy purs, reducing the risk of the seized and secured enemy pur being able to escape your hold on them. Volumes could be said or written on the importance of opposing forces, tradecraft principles and practices for MSD and CQC, but the only way to properly learn such skills and be able to effectively employ them, retaining such important tradecraft training information, is by hands-on practical training and drilling the skills, principles until you cannot forget them and cannot get them wrong, and they will be there for you under wide-ranging and varied situations where effective threat neutralization and the seizing, securing, control and containment of the enemy or the application of improvised mechanical restraints is required, and wide-ranging other threat neutralization uses. Like so many things in MSD and CQC, it is the unwritten, unsaid word that is important, and so many combatants may not even realize that they understand and utilize opposing forces, practices and principles in all their skills executions, because they are built into the basic, advanced and specialist skills training of objective achievement and wide-ranging roles, duties, and for wide and varied purposes and practices ranging from military, law enforcement, close personal protection, security, to patient handling and civilian close quarters combat training, military self-defense training, and all other usage purposes by means of MSD, CQC, and CQB. Knowledge is power, and arming yourself with such knowledge will provide capabilities. Or by listening to this podcast and understanding that you do not have such capabilities, you can seek such training and add this to your MSD CQC arsenal, making you a that much more capable combatant or civvy CQC MSD practitioner. I appreciate all yous that have endorsed these podcasts, and unfortunately, with time being less available due to a capacity year of training provision, I have to record these podcasts where and when possible, and often that means on course and in other countries. I leave Monday for the Thailand course that is closed off to applications, along with the annual Australasian course that I'll return to Camp Todd to conduct. There is a May scheduled Thailand course, and it looks like through demand we will have to conduct courses there in July, August as well. Keep up your training, always pursuing your best level of capabilities. Remember, for more tactics and skills content, cqctimes.com, or for training, toddgroup.com. If you have any questions you would like addressed on this MSD podcast, send them to comms@toddgroup.com.